Hey there guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at the Truthear Pure. I have it out on the spinny plate along with the Hexa because we're going to be doing a little compare and contrast. The Pure is the successor to the Hexa, and we're going to figure out if it's a worthy successor or not. I already did a little unboxing of the Pure last week, and if you'd like to check out that video, I'll leave a link in the description below. But if you want to skip it, boom, bang, hello, there it is. Now that we're all caught up, the Truthear Pure is a one dynamic driver, 3 balanced armature set, retailing for $89.99, which is actually the same retail price as the Hexa. I'm going to tell you how I feel about it, give you a few comparisons, and then we're going to make our final verdict as to how it compares to that Hexa. Guys, thank you so much for watching. This is EZG Audio. Now let's get into it. So the Truthear Pure has some pretty big shoes to fill given that it's the next iteration of the Hexa, and the Hexa was already one of my favorite hybrid sets under $100. The Pure seems to be a response to a few of the criticisms that have been levied against the Hexa. The Hexa can sound a little bit analytical, it can sound a little thin on some tracks. Some say it lacks a little bit of that mid-bass punch or slam that some people are going to want. Naturally, we all have different tastes, but I think that the Pure was tuned with some of those criticisms in mind. Honestly, I hope they continue to sell both of these sets. They have different enough tunings that they're going to appeal to different audiences, depending on what your priorities are. That warm, fuzzy glow and the harder bass response of the Pure is going to be a welcome revision for those that wanted a more musical sound out of their Hexa. And the Hexa is still going to be the king of analytical sounds under $100 in the hybrid world. Let's talk about the bass response on the Pure. Alright, just from the jump, I want to make clear, the Pure is not a bass headset. The mid-bass has been elevated compared to the Hexa, but not to a dramatic degree. Just enough to make for a more satisfying low-end texture that feels richer and fuller than the Hexa. The added texture creates more energy and engagement. That kind of livens up tracks that have a more significant bass presence. The Pure brings a more satisfying slam and kick, a bit more texture to that mid-bass, and the bass is pretty typical for dynamic driver bass. It's neither particularly quick or slow on the attack or decay, pretty neutral, natural. The sub-bass sounds just a little bit elevated over the mid-bass, kind of in line, but there is a bit more sub-bass than mid-bass. I found the sub-bass to bring a lot of depth and immersion without becoming a distraction, as I have in a few other new meta-ish tune sets. The bass was kept fairly separated from the mid-range while synergizing with it and allowing that elevated mid-bass to lend our warmed-up mid-range some enhanced performance. Overall, I'd say I much prefer the bass presentation of the Pure to the Hexa for its more engaging sound. The greatest and most striking departure from the original Hexa is by far the lower mid-range. The Pure virtually eliminates that mid-bass slash lower mid-range scoop of the original Hexa, giving us more of a warm, cozy, open mid-range that delivers powerful, resonant vocals that sit just above the rest of the sonic presentation. Male vocals have benefited the most from the changes, gaining a presence and an energy in the Pure that far outpaces the Hexa. I really like the male vocal presentation a lot more on this set. The enhanced mid-bass allows that full range of male vocals to shine, eliminating the sometimes thin or hollow male vocal presentation of the Hexa. Female vocals retain that same kind of sweet, soulful characteristic that I find in the Hexa without too much of a change aside from a bit of an added encompassing warm glow to the mid-range. Pianos and stringed instruments hang around a bit more than normal given that enhanced mid-range, and the entire presentation sounds most comparable to a record player being played over a speaker, a well-tuned, old-fashioned kind of speaker. Inviting, it's comforting, and it works well for most genres. I really like the warmed up mid-range a lot. And as much as I like that warmed up mid-range, it does kind of compete with the treble presentation just a bit. The Pure gives a slightly more relaxed treble presentation than the Hexa that's more in line with the JM1 tilt and that new meta-ish sound. Controlled non-sibilant treble for sure, but a little bit lighter this go. This leads to a more comfortable set for those treble sensitivities, as well as one that's more amenable to high volume listening. However, when comparing the Hexa to the Pure side by side, that de-scooped mid-bass combined with the slightly reduced treble gives us a treble that doesn't have the same clarity or extension that the Hexa brings. Air is de-emphasized on the Pure compared to the Hexa, which I'm sure will make the set more appealing for those that are sensitive to the highest frequency frequencies, but once again, this detracts from some of the analytical properties of the Hexa. Micro details aren't as present, and cymbals ring just a millisecond shorter with those changes combined. I find a tip that cuts bass, like the Tang Zhu Tang Sankai balanced, helps me better bring forward micro details and treble presence. The Hexa has always been praised for its technical capabilities, and the Pure is carrying the torch well, even if the Hexa still holds a thin lead when it comes to clarity and instrument separation. The soundstage on the Pure is tall and wide, and actually has enhanced depth versus the Hexa. It's dynamic and lively enough with enough texture to satisfy most people that are looking for a neutral or a vocal forward set. Imaging is precise and honestly stands out around the $100 price point among hybrids as exceptionally strong. Busy tracks play without missing a beat thanks to a quick transient response time, and it has excellent cohesion for its hybrid setup, and the aforementioned lack of sibilance is always a nice thing to have. Alrighty guys, just to finish out the review, I wanted to give you a couple of comparisons to two different sets in the price range of the Truthear Pure. By popular demand, first up we have the juicier Defiant. Now the Defiant and the Pure are different enough that you're probably going to want one or the other depending on what your favorite sound signature is, right? If you're more of a flathead, you're more of a neutral vocal forward kind of person, you probably want to go with the Pure. If you like a more accentuated bass, a more accentuated treble, then you'd probably like the juicier Defiant. It's really one or the other. Technical capabilities are similar. I would say that the Pure is probably the stronger technical performer, going to give you a bit more of an analytical sound between the two. I like to call the Pure fun-analytical because it has enough low-end presence that it keeps me interested, but it's not overly bright and it's not overly detailed to the point where I feel fatigued. The Defiant is great in that it is fun and engaging and musical, but it lacks the micro details that we have here on the Pure. And the other comparison that I want to make, the RD T10 Pro. Now the T10 Pro is also around $100 depending on where you grab one, and the T10 Pro has a very interesting tuning. I'd say that they made this tuning for bass heads, but even bass heads probably want a little bit more separation between mid bass and sub bass. This is a single planar driver IEM, which sometimes has a bit of an issue when it comes to instrument separation, or layering rather. Well, both in this case, because the instrument separation isn't that great on the T10 Pro either. The sub bass and the mid bass kind of bleed into the midsection, causing the whole presentation to sound kind of muddy. It's not a set that I recommend, and if you're a bass head, there's probably better stuff on the market for you. But if you were thinking of either of these two, I'd probably go with the Pure based on techs alone. In conclusion, I feel like the Pure has absolved the Hexa of a few of its original sins. I personally prefer the more relaxed treble and increased mid-bass on the Pure, and I feel like it makes for a more comfortable and engaging experience on balance. The Hexa is going to remain the more analytical between the two, give you more of a better sense of micro details and layering, but the Pure is a more engaging, casual experience. I'm hoping that they continue to produce both the Hexa and the Pure because they're both great sets with unique tunings that can both exist in the same ecosystem. Guys, hope you enjoyed the review. I'll catch you next time. Stay pure.